Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3889. Today's date is February 2000, 15th of February 2026. It's been almost like a night at 9:29 p.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. Let's go. All right. The question is my editing workflow efficient, repeatable, and clear enough that someone else could understand it? Oh, okay, that's a really good question. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is a YouTube realization question. When I ask this question to myself, I would know more about myself as a content creator, as a YouTuber. I would know more about platform, social media platform, Instagram, YouTube platform. I would know more about my execution process, my creativity. Okay. When I ask this question to myself, I kind of like a getting realization regarding about, am I credible enough to consider myself as a YouTuber or content creator? Okay. So that's I'm kind of like asking this question to get that realization. All right. Now regarding about the question says that is my kind of like assembly workflow or kind of like assembly my timeline is good enough to understand someone, like is my editing workflow efficient, repeatable, and clear enough to kind of like a someone else could understand. What is actually my editing workflow? Okay, what is actually editing workflow? Okay, editing workflow is a might be kind of like a little bit of complicated subject, but that is not. Okay, yeah. Example is this thing is that key when doctor is kind of like a doing some sort of surgery, a surgeon kind of like a do some sort of surgery, there is a couple of things that he required. Okay, yeah. Surgery is a kind of like a very delicate process. Okay, yeah. A surgeon can kind of like a somebody cut your body part and veins and things. He knows everything regarding about what inside your bodies and things like that. And obviously the inside of our body there are so many things that very delicate, heart, lungs, whatnot. Surgeon should supposed to be very precise regarding about where he should supposed to be touch or where he should supposed to be not touch, because it depends on the kind of like a patient. If he touch something, then probably patient might be gone or things might happen very crazy. Okay, yeah. So surgeon should supposed to be aware of everything. It's a very very delicate thing. Okay, yeah. But when the surgeon kind of like doing a surgery, he is not just kind of like going to do the surgery. He just like basically this, when he try to do this kind of like a very focused work, he need so many things. He need a kind of like a multiple tools, kind of like equipments, everything. Okay, yeah. And not only everything, those are kind of like a tool are properly sterilized. Okay, imagine is this thing that you are putting a kind of like assembly needle and it is not sterilized, then it kind of like assembly that germ will kind of like get inside the body. And even if you successfully done your operation, but that unsterilized needle might kind of like creates a cancer in the body. So which is very very essential to sterilize all the equipment with 2 3 10 times, that make sure that needle or any kind of like equipment doesn't really have any kind of like a germs or things and that. Okay, also make sure that the operation theater would be kind of like assembly that key like a airproof, like a basically it doesn't really have any kind of like assembly other particle element should supposed to be get inside and kind of like assembly things might be went crazy. Okay, yeah. All the kind of like assembly doctors, they kind of like wear the head cover, they also wear the mask, they also kind of like make sure that they wouldn't able to do any kind of like a stuff. Okay, so they are been really very protective regarding about doing this operation. Okay, yeah. Everything is properly controlled regarding about how much air that is had, how much oxygen, everything is actually very much controlled. Okay, yeah. What I realized that ki usually is this thing we actually kind of like praise surgeon that ki how they kind of like did something really good job, but that is not. Okay, yeah. There are so many factors are kind of like responsible to make that surgery as good as possible. Okay, yeah, they sterilize the equipment, they make sure that the surrounding kind of like a well protected, well well better. Okay, yeah, they kind of like wear all those safety equipments, they do lot of things. Okay, they also kind of like some nurses and all those people who are kind of like somebody helping surgeon regarding about everything. So there are so many factors are kind of like somebody responsible to surgeon kind of like do his surgery very well. Okay, yeah, and that is called kind of like somebody efficient workflow. Efficient workflow is a kind of like a depends on kind of like it kind of like it's kind of like a things that na basically is this thing na, like why am I kind of like saying this example is kind of like closely associated with the editor too. Okay, yeah, because when the editor kind of like doing a editing, he required a lot of things. He required sound effects, he required another image or music or things and that and that and that. God not what does this thing really required. So basically is this thing as an editor really required all those files. Okay, yeah, and properly structure, like basically make sure that what is actually b-roll, what is actually headshot, what is actually this and that VFX shot, then everything should supposed to be properly structured. Okay, yeah, and properly align with this thing with the naming culture and things and that. So basically when these actually have this proper structure, folder structure and things and that, as a creator will not gonna fumble. He knows where he should supposed to be get the shot. He take that shot, kind of like put that clip into one after another and things and that. Editing make faster is not depend upon editor should supposed to do the fasting editing. No, there are so many things really required. Okay, yeah, and those so many things are kind of like somebody properly arranged, then kind of like somebody the editor can edit their video very much efficiently. That is called efficient workflow. It is also kind of like efficient in every workplace, like basically in the cooking. Okay, yeah, like basically this thing when the kind of like a chef is kind of like a cooking something, he wanted to make sure that every ingredient that he has should supposed to be available, everything with a kind of like somebody spoon, everything. So that is called kind of like some efficient workflow, right? Now regarding about the question is that do I have that efficient workflow? Well, let me give you context. Okay, yeah, my content is not a kind of like a long form video. Okay, yeah, when I make the long form video, I really require that efficient kind of like a technique and things like that. Okay, my content is about graphic designing. I kind of like create mostly a short form of video. Okay, yeah, and my folder structure is that I usually kind of like a set as a folder structure day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Okay, yeah, so today I have kind of like a day 603. Okay, yeah, so that means kind of like every day whatever I work done, I kind of like take photo or things and that I save all those kind of like a data on that day folder. Okay, like today's date is a 603, so I kind of like save all those things. So basically when I need that file, I just kind of like look at and do it and things like that. Okay, yeah, another thing is that usually when I try to look at the audio, I have kind of like a separate folder for audio. Okay, yeah, and video is that kind of like I all have kind of like a video images in kind of like a day folder, which is kind of like a very convenient for me. As also in that day folder, it has also kind of like a Premiere Pro project file too, as also Photoshop PSD file too. Okay, yeah, so if I need any kind of like a stuff, those are always be there and things like that. So I would not gonna worry about my folder structure. It's kind of like a really good, really well folder structure. Okay, yeah, and for me it's a kind of like a very much efficient workflow. I have to make my kind of like a assembly workflow as much as efficient, but I think that's hard enough because as I mentioned, my content is short form of content, and short form of content means like that usually is this thing, my content is kind of like having very less amount of time. When having very less amount of time, I might not do that much edit. Okay, because usually poster design usually kind of like some recording and things that actually happen. Mostly kind of like things do I really require is a PNG files, and that's it mostly, probably. All right, yeah, so my workflow is very much efficient. All right, should I ask another question? Let's go. Can I pause a project and return without confusion or overwhelm? Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, yeah. So the question is that ki if I doing editing and if I pause my editing, then will I able to be continue that editing? Well, I think that yes, I can. Another thing is that, as I mentioned, my content is a kind of like a short form content. Okay, yeah. I'm probably really kind of like a editing my video doesn't really take that much amount of time. Probably within an hour, I would edit my video. It's not really that much kind of like a something very bigger thing for me. Obviously, is this thing if I have content about a long form video, then it might really require kind of like a simply couple of day edit. But I think that na ki as for me, I would not gonna forget regarding about the editing. Okay, so let me give you kind of like a little bit of process that how do I supposed to be edit. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing now my edit, as I mentioned, short form of content doesn't really require that much kind of like editing process. It's just kind of like a stitch another one video after another, that's it. But when I make a long form video, there is a multiple process actually happen. Okay, yeah. So what exactly process happen? First of all is that ki I would arrange the all the clips. Okay, yeah. Let's just say that ki like I kind of like still remember I was kind of like making a video regarding about a kind of like a something like a bhasha and things like that. Okay, yeah. So what exactly is this thing? I kind of like shoot myself video regarding about talking about something. Okay, yeah. And I have that video file. Okay, yeah. Also I shoot kind of like a b-rolls or maybe kind of like available in internet. I download those b-rolls and things like that. Also sound effects and things like that. Okay, yeah. My first technique to do my editing is that ki create a story. Okay, yeah. Like a create a story means like that ki like a basically is this thing, when you return the movie and when you edit the movie, like a movies or any kind of like a videos are written twice. Okay, yeah. First is actually written on the paper, second is actually written on the editing table. Okay, yeah. And there would be kind of like a very difference in between. Okay, yeah. The story you might be written on the paper might be kind of like look very different in editing table. So that will gonna happen too. Okay, yeah. So for that particular process, pre-production, post-production are very much essential to kind of like make sure that whatever it should supposed to be written, it is exactly represent in a kind of like editing style too. But in the editing process, there are so many things that bother. Like basically there are so many kind of like a hassle. There are so many problems that actually happen in the movie making process. There are so many kind of like a fucked up thing is actually happen. Okay, yeah. Sometimes kind of like we have to reshoot and things and that and that and that. And because of some time producer didn't really have that much amount of money to reshoot and things like that, so they kind of like a twitch something. Okay, yeah. Like a twitch something that kind of like doing a shortcut and things and that and that. Sometimes they do. Okay, but bigger production they can't really afford to kind of like somebody mess up with their story. They do kind of like a reshoot and things like that. And when the reshoot actually happened, that is a kind of like somebody, it kind of like a represent that your pre-production is not really good. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing, when the production has actually happened, when the production end, that means it end. Reshoot is a kind of like a meant to be kind of like a somebody you are not really focused on kind of like a pre-production or production. It's not like you are not really prepared for shoot. That is very essential that when the shoot is actually happened, because when the reshoot is actually happened, actors might not be available. Okay, yeah. Their dates would be kind of like not available. Another thing, their makeup would be not really available. I'm gonna kind of like give you another example is that ki the Justice League. Okay, yeah. Like the Justice League is actually kind of like made by the Zack Snyder. Okay, yeah. Which is kind of like simply reshoot. Okay, I reshooted the last segment. Okay, and basically is this saying that ki that reshoot actually happened. The Henry Cavill was kind of like somebody assigned for Mission Impossible. Okay, yeah, and he should supposed to be have mustache. Okay, so in the Justice League, obviously Superman shouldn't supposed to be look Superman like look really kind of like a crazy with the mustache. So probably is this thing that ki they just kind of like by VFX they kind of like sort it out. They kind of like remove that mustache by VFX, and that is completely wrong. It kind of like weird the face. The Henry Cavill face doesn't really look really nice and things like that. So that shouldn't supposed to be happen, because you paid so much amount of money for reshoot one thing, you kind of like adding actor their cost and things like that. And another thing, after this character do shoot and things like that, you are adding kind of like a VFX cost to things and that, and there are so many fuck up thing happen. Reshoot is never meant to be happen. Okay, yeah, it's kind of like a very, 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 very emergency thing. Then you kind of like a reshoot, but still, probably reshoot is a really not good stuff. Whatever. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, na, ki how the editing process actually happened. First of all, is that ki I'm not gonna talk about the movie editing. Movie editing is a kind of like a very big thing. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna talk about kind of like a video editing, a YouTube video editing. Okay, yeah. Because I did it. So basically, in the YouTube video editing, you kind of like arrange the clip one after another. Just add the clip. Do not do any kind of like a sound effects. Do not do anything at all. Just kind of like arrange the clips to kind of like create the story. That does it kind of like a story sell by this looking at the timeline. Okay, yeah. So yeah, like basically is this thing, when there is a dialogue, when there is a kind of like simply the story progress. So add each clip after another. So basically it kind of like a stitch and kind of like a tell a story. Okay, yeah. Now this actually happened. Now what you have to do is that you add the b-roll. Okay, yeah. Add the b-roll regarding about things and that and that. Okay, yeah. B-roll kind of like a complement the whatever the kind of like a character actually saying. Like if I'm gonna say that the Constitution of India and things and that and that, so probably there is a b-roll regarding about Constitution, regarding about things. Another thing is that when the talking head video, make sure that talking head video shouldn't supposed to be more than 10 seconds. Okay, yeah. Because if it kind of like a more than 10 seconds, people might gonna bore and things like that. So probably add b-roll, okay, or something kind of like a VFX or things or that and that, so that kind of like a create an illusion and things like that. Okay, after adding a b-roll, then it is really essential to make sure that the audio is very much clear. So clear the audio, clear all those kind of like things, clear all those kind of like something that the audio properly good or not. Okay, and then after that add a kind of like assembly, then color grade your video. Okay, like first of all color correct your video, add a kind of like adjustment layer, color correct entire video, and then add a kind of like assembly color grade your video. So this is a kind of like a multiple process that you do. Sound effects like sound effects. Okay, yeah, sound effects, music and things like that, these are also really essential too. Okay, yeah. Now let me tell you one thing, these are the workflow are different according to the every kind of like a video that you make. Okay, yeah. If your video kind of like a vlog video, then probably you just have to shoot the vlog, stitch one after another, that's it. But when you are kind of like a shooting a song or things and that, there is a lot of things. Okay, yeah. So basically every editing workflow is a kind of like a bit more different regarding about their content creation, how their content should supposed to be and how they should supposed to execute things and that. Okay, so every editing is not something kind of like a simply look kind of like a simple, sometimes it's kind of like a very much difficult to things like that. Okay, so all right, so my kind of like assembly, my editing workflow, can I pause the project and return without the confusion, things overwhelm? Well, basically as I mentioned, my editing is not really that much bigger. It take me kind of like a 1 hour to edit my video. As I mentioned, my video is a short form of video. Okay, yeah, which is not really that much time, like basically the maximum time, like a maximum length would be just a minute. Okay, that's it. So probably it doesn't really take that much amount of time to edit and things like that. But long form of video, it will might gonna take kind of like simply 1 or 2 days, and for that particular thing I might not kind of like overwhelm or confuse or things like that, because I do know what kind of like simply editing, because when I try to edit long form video, then I do these multiple steps to arrange the clips first, then to understand that story is properly tell or not, then add b-roll, sound effects, music, things and that. Okay, so this is kind of like a simple steps. All right, so this is listen, I should supposed to end here, and thank you.